I always say revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, but cash is king at the end of the day, right? You can be profitable on paper and have no cash in the bank.
You're listening to Titans of the Trades. I'm your host, Ryan Englin, author of Hire Better People Faster and creator of the CoreFit hiring system, a proven process to help growing companies attract and retain only the best. I'm on a mission to revolutionize the perception of the trades and elevate it to new heights. After growing up in a blue-collar family, my passion for making the trades cool again runs deep. If you're a titan in the industry and want to be on my show, stick around until the end and I'll reveal how you can be my next guest. Welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Ryan Englin, and I just had the pleasure of sitting down with Lauren Furtado, Unconventional CFO to the trades and construction contractors. And I know what you're thinking, another finance episode. It's going to be boring. I actually really enjoyed it, and I don't typically do well with finance episodes. She is unconventional, to say the least, but I love the way that she's able to take incredibly complex subject matter, issues, even some of the stuff that we need to do inside of our business and just make it so simple and help everyone out. Get ready to take some notes. If you've ever struggled financially in your contracting business, this is the episode for you. I want to welcome to today's show, Lauren Furtado. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
We were having such a great conversation. I'm like, I better hit record. We got to get some value out to our listeners. So, hey, I know that the name of the company is Unconventional CFO, and you and I chatted a little bit. You've got an unconventional story for how you got here. 20 years working for big box accounting firms, and then one day said, that's it. I'm going to go start my own company. I'm going to do it in a different way. I'm going to have a different image. And I love it. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is just because anytime someone says, I'm not your typical CFO, I'm like, whew, all right. So share with our listeners a little bit about how you got here and what it is that you really do. Like, what are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I took a very traditional route from the accounting world. I worked for a big four public accounting firm for almost 20 years. And I know people hear that and they're like, wow, I can't believe you made it that far. But I'll say a lot of different things I saw, a lot of different roles, a lot of different organizations, worked with a lot of really smart people and felt, I'll say, intellectually challenged continually. But the rubber really hit the road for me in 2021. From personal perspective, our family experienced a significant change. My husband unexpectedly passed. And here I was. I was at the time in my late 30s. I am now a solo parent to two children. Once the dust settled, I'll say in the early grief process, I couldn't help but look at what I wanted our life to look like. And for us, that was, do we have to move? Do we continue to live in the same town? Or, everything. Because when you lose your partner, you lose not only the person, but you lose all the plans you had, right? When you get married and you buy the house and you both have the jobs and you're doing all the things, you're making every decision together about what your future looks like, right? And for me, I couldn't help but take a good hard look at how I was making my money. And I thought to myself, is this really it? And I knew that God truly had something different for my path. I had gained so much experience in the 20 years serving multi-billion-dollar Fortune 500 companies. I mean, seeing crazy operations, seeing a lot of different insane frauds and errors. And I mean, you name it, I've seen it, bankruptcies. And for me, I really wanted to create impact. And I thought about with the days I have left, what can I do with what I know now and help people that truly have skin in the game? And like, I'm so passionate about seeing the impact and helping these small businesses, multi-generational businesses, right? When you see them hiring people, creating, benefits and compensation for families and creating impact in communities, like I get so fired up about that. So that's how I ended up creating Unconventional CFO.
Wow. And it was no accident that you put your appearance out there with the tattoos, because you do not look like a bean counter, someone that wants to sit in a broom closet and not have any human interaction. Very well spoken. I know you do a lot of speaking as well. And I just think it's so cool. I think that what the industry really needs, and I know you serve primarily construction contractors, right?
Yep.
Uh, what the industry needs, they need a breath of fresh air. They need some change. They need it different. It's not your granddad's construction industry anymore. It's changed. And so I love that you're doing that. So you spend time as a CFO for billion-dollar brands. Now you're working with million-dollar brands. Uh, Someone told me once that there really is no difference in the size of the company. It's just how much the problem costs you. Is that true?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Um, so yes, in terms of I think that is true. And I think there are some differences, right? It's so much more personal. Think about it, right? It's going to cost you as the owner versus like, thousands and millions of shareholders that like just have a couple of shares of Novartis stock or whoever they own, right?
Yeah, that's
So
fair.
I think just the personal aspect and the level of care is different. And like the environment and culture feels so different. So I think obviously when it relates to finances, it's different, right? Like you can measure revenue, whether you're multi-billion dollar and you've got 1,000 different revenue streams, or you're a contractor and you're just doing, electrical work for residential customers, right? So I don't think that the concepts are much different. When I talk about like the key financial concepts, yes, I might have entire departments that are looking at it versus maybe, your cousin that works in the office and does the bookkeeping and she's the one looking at the P&L every month.
Sure, sure. So you shared this personal experience that you had a few years ago. Uh, Suddenly, you're a single mom to two, and that was the time when you're like, "God's got something else for me. I'm going to go start this. I'm going to give back." I know you're super passionate, have a lot of care for this industry. How did that experience shape your approach to this? Because unconventional CFO is not an accident.
No, absolutely not. And playfully, right, I don't look like what you would expect when you're looking for a finance personnel, right? But I think in terms of just simplifying things and like getting to the root of what really matters, right? Let's cut through all the fluff and like get straight to like what are the important things in your business that you need to make sure you're focused on in order to meet your goals, in order to drive your business to the big lofty goals that you have in mind, that BHAG that you have. So I think it's just cutting through all of the noise and like actually getting to the root of what really matters. And then I think let's talk soft skills stuff, right? For me, it's two pieces. And it's a balance. And I think it's also why you have a lot of females that are like your back office folks, right? You've got usually a team of people, whether it's included in your HR or it's included in your finance department. I'll say a lot of construction businesses actually have women in these roles. And I think there's a reason why. I think it's a balance of empathy and understanding and like, hey, I know this was a really hard month, but also being able to celebrate the wins and like just bringing that femininity to it in terms of like, hey, like this is tough. The finance piece of it can be very personal. But at the same side, like the resilience piece, right? Like, okay, it is hard, but we're going to get through it and let's figure out how to get there. So let's not sit and wallow in victimhood for too long because life keeps moving, right? We've got to put one foot in front of the other and figure out how to keep running this business and be profitable and do all the things.
Yeah. Ah, it's so great. Um, and yes, I have noticed that usually office is filled with women and the field is filled with men. And I do think I do tell people this. I like if you want to solve the labor crisis in the trades, start inviting women to the field. But we have a lot of work to do to get there. Uh, so you've got this practice now. You're not your typical CPA. I know you play with that stereotype. Tell us a little bit. How does that show up? What does that look like for these contractors?
Yeah, I think it's really breaking down the barrier of what accounting and finance personnel are. And I think, unfortunately, and well deserved, we have a bad rap. And I think it has to do with the way that we interact. And I think, like, the root of that can sometimes be different. I think you typically have introverts, right, that like are uncomfortable with conversation and relationship and all the things. But then you also have a component of people are so deep sometimes into the numbers and the concepts, they have a very hard time communicating it to non-accounting people, right? So if I were sitting with another CPA, another CFO, we could very easily get into some like more complicated, whether it's tax code or rules on business combinations or whatever. But being able to simplify and explain things in a way that's totally digestible for the people who really need to know versus just emailing over a bunch of reports, like I think that is unfortunately a quality that not a lot of people have that sit in my seat.
Got it. So you talk about helping business owners shift from fear to confidence when it comes to their financials. And I know a lot of business owners, this is like that conversation you do not have in public. You don't talk about it. It's kind of that if I just put my head down and don't think about it, I don't have to worry about it.
Yep.
But what's a moment you witnessed when someone went from being overwhelmed by their numbers to taking action? Like something that they've never really done before and they're like, "Wow, this is amazing. Like the heavens have parted."
Yeah.
Do you have an example like that?
Yeah, I actually the first one that came to mind was, they were previous employees who had purchased the company, and back in 2018. We actually only did a one-time service. I said, "Guys, let me come in and, like, help you with some profitability stuff. Let's take a look at the numbers and, like, really understand what's going on this year and, like, where we wanna be and, like, what changes we need to make." And they were in tears by the end of it, actually, because to come up with a plan and sit and spend the time and explain it to them, they were just overwhelmed with the fact that it wasn't so far out of reach. Because for them, they had so much fear and anxiety around it, and the avoidance was just fueling that, right? So, not looking
Yeah.
at the numbers, not understanding it, not having somebody in their corner just fueled such deep fear that, like, when we actually sat and went through it and walked through the numbers and they felt comfortable asking what they thought were the quote dumb questions, like they just felt so much gratitude because it didn't feel so far off that they could get in a much better position by doing some very simple things.
Wow. And you talk about vulnerability in finances or what you call financial nakedness.
Yeah.
And it's tough. So how do you create like a judgment-free zone? How do you keep people from being scared to have these conversations? Like I imagine there's a little bit of work going on between their ears to get here. But one of the things I've heard about, especially in the trades, is a lot of these guys grew up in the trades and they want to go build stuff. They
Yep.
don't want to mess with numbers. They don't want to mess with the finances. As long as there's cash at the end of the week to make payroll, they're happy. Not probably a really good way to run a business that you want around for a long time. But how do you create that? How do you help them make that shift?
Yeah, so I think candidly, like hiring a CFO, right? There's an element of like when I pay for something, I'm going to use it, right? So if I invest more money actually in my gym membership, I'm going to show up because I don't want to waste my money, right? So there is an element of like when you have somebody where we have scheduled touch points, like you're going to be forced to look at it with me, if you have recurring services, at least in the guise of my business. But I think it's about relationship, right? And I am not for everybody. And I realize that. So it's truly about creating trust from the onset. I mean, the second we get on a discovery call, if this feels like it's not going to be collaborative, I don't want to force you to do it, right? Because candidly, right, there is a lot of perceived like judgment that could come with finances. There might be even like financial traumas. I have no idea like people's backgrounds, right?
Yeah.
From your family of origin, you have no idea like what people have been through. But even if I said, Ryan, show me your credit card statement right now from a personal perspective, you probably would cringe a little bit, right? Like, I'm going to see the decisions you made. I'm going to see that you ordered dinner out 3 times last week and that you spent, X amount of money filling up your gas tank. I'm going to see like all of the things that accumulate in your day to day life. And that's exactly how it is in your finances of your business. I'm going to
Yeah.
see that you had a bad hire. I'm going to see that you had, wasted money on lunches for the team or whatever it is, right? I'm not saying like every meal you buy for your team is a waste. Let's just be clear. Like, you know, there might be a rationale, but it's showing the decisions you've made, whether they're good, bad, or anything in between, that I think people are embarrassed to show that. And it's
Yeah.
when you're not totally sure the direction you need to go, even just being able to reveal like the financial nakedness of where you're at today just feels super intimate.
It's interesting. That reminds me, I was in a past life, I was in the mortgage industry and I would ask for bank statements. You want to borrow $1 million to buy a home. I want to see how you spend your money. Like it made total sense to me. The amount of times that I would get redacted bank statements where they blacked out the stuff. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I need to know what's going on here. Like, and yeah, people get really embarrassed about that stuff. Um, it's not a place for us to judge. And I used to tell them that all the time. Like, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to make a good financial decision for the bank to
Mhm.
make sure that we're lending to someone who actually has the money to pay us back.
And it's
And
this
it's
it's the
crazy.
same yeah, it's the same concept here, right? But the difference is, you know, you tell me you wanna grow your business and double in revenue next year and grow your team and do all of these things. If you don't have the financial data to back that up and understand, like, the steps you need to take to get there, then you're never going to really get off the ground. It's
Yeah.
connecting the goals from a personal and business perspective of the owners to where you're at now. Like, we have to bridge between the 2. We can't just, like, magically get there by, checking your bank account balance once a month.
Growth is expensive. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs forget that. And the faster you grow, the more cash you need, and which is why a lot of these companies that you read about in the news that are growing so fast have to get investments. They just raised $200 million because the speed at which they want to grow is expensive. And I think they forget that. I got to thinking about something. I wasn't going to ask you about this, but now understanding this financial nakedness, I would love to know what your thoughts are on open book management and actually sharing your financial data with the entire team so they understand. I personally believe that sometimes showing people a P&L that don't know how to read a P&L can be a very intimidating.
Yeah.
But I know open book management is a very popular idea. I have a lot of contractors that want to do it, but for whatever reason don't. What are your thoughts on that?
Think it's balance. I'm not for totally open book. I'm for listen, you can show the field the numbers that are important to motivate them and explain why, right? I love the idea of compensating, especially supers, and kind of that like middle management level, by profitability as it relates to execution of work, just to enhance efficiency and be able to incentivize folks, obviously without sacrificing quality in the field. Safety, same thing. Um, but honestly, like to see a full P&L, I think sometimes would scare people. If I think about some of the other things that are sitting inside a P&L that, like, if you don't understand it to your exact point, like they're not going to appreciate, how maybe there's plans to respond to some of that stuff
Mm,
in the P&L. If I think about things that come up like legal matters, if I think about like even just cost of insurance, if I think about owner draws and things like that, or even the opposite, they might actually be shocked to see how much the owners don't pay themselves, right? And I wouldn't want to scare people
yeah.
and risk them leaving, right? That's the other thing is like, oh, is this company going to go under? It doesn't look that great, right? Because I think you have some extremes that may happen in seasons where like things are tighter. So I think if you get in the habit of continually sharing that without really creating context, I think, like you said, with the business owners, they've come up through the trade and they are comfortable sitting in that kind of doer spot versus CEO. I mean,
Yeah.
think about how like inexperienced people are in the field. And if you try to explain these concepts to them too early, I think it's going to scare them out of the job or get them like from a relationship standpoint, there's going to be a huge disparity on like relatability, I think too.
It reminds me of a client that I had years ago, and I got to talking to the owner about what's his plan. Like, what is your purpose? Like, why are you building this up? And he's like, I really want to, I want to sell in the next 10 years. And I think my son and son-in-law would be great for this. And so I was like, well, let's see how they feel. And they're like mid 20s, late 20s. And he gets them on a call and, the company's doing like 10 million a year. And I'll never forget this. They shared it with the sons and they said, yeah. And when you buy the business from us, and they're like, what? You're not going to just give this to us? And they're like, no. And they're like, but you're loaded. The company does $10 million a year. I know for a fact you have a jet, a personal jet that you're not sharing with us. I'm sure you own an island in the Bahamas. Like they're just going through this list of it's $10 million. Like you have to be loaded. And it took years for them to understand that an 8% net does not keep the lights on. Like it just doesn't.
Oh,
And uh and so yeah, I mean, and these were owners' kids, and they were completely clueless on how this whole thing worked. And then to explain that there are things on the balance sheet that don't impact profitability, but impact cash flow, they're like, and it's these concepts, and I think for a lot of people they can be incredibly complex. And I know that you talk about making these concepts approachable. You talk about simplifying it. Uh, what are some common complexity issues that you see owners going through or thinking about, and you're like, let me show you how simple this can be?
yeah. Yeah, I think, really in that mindset and, like, the block stuff, the overcomplication turns into avoidance, and so I think for people to understand that there aren't, you know, 50 different metrics that you need to be reviewing when we say review your finances, right? That's such a vague term for us to use of, like, review your numbers, look at your finances, and it's like, well, where do I start if I have no idea? So what we focus on with our clients, I call the critical 4, and they're not complicated things. So I'll run through them very quickly now. Revenue is number one, right? Without revenue, you have no business. Now,
Mhm.
there are nuances of what you need to review in revenue, right? Look at every service offering, look at every product you sell. Make sure you're looking at pricing, you're looking at competitive landscape. So there are components within revenue that need to be reviewed, but like high level revenue every month, what does that look like? Net margin or gross margin, I'm sorry. Gross margin is going to be your revenue minus your direct expenses attributed to providing the service or selling the product. Want to make sure you have healthy margins. And again, reviewing that by offering is the way you want to go job by job, right? So if we're talking in the trades world, you want to look at by job profitability, labor, materials, all the things that go into it. Then you want to look at net margin, right? So when we get from gross to net, the difference between the two is the cost it takes to operate your business, insurance, rent expense, employees in the back office. So all of the other things to keep the lights on and actually run your business. It is so important to look at net margin because, like these guys did in the example Ryan just gave, they're looking at $10 million. I'll tell you now, in the trades, margins are not gigantic. We're not talking 30% margins, right? If you are in 5 to 15%, I wouldn't say that's terrible, honestly.
Yeah, I
Like,
get it.
and so it takes a lot of volume to create not a lot of margin in these environments.
Yeah.
So it's just really understanding what those other costs look like and have we appropriately baked that stuff into when we're doing job costing, when we're actually writing out estimates, have we appropriately looked at overhead? Um, then the last, I always say revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, but cash is king at the end of the day, right? You said it before. There is a difference between being profitable on your P&L, which is your income statement, just to level set everybody, right? And those three metrics I already talked about, all on your income statement. This last one is going to be sitting on your balance sheet, and let's talk about kind of what to do with it. But you can be profitable on paper and have no cash in the bank. There are things that show up in expenses and in revenue that actually has not hit your bank account. Let's talk about one very quick example on revenue. Okay, I invoice a customer, right? I have earned and provided the services, it's gone out the door. So the invoice gone out, revenue hits your P&L. It looks like I'm going to get it, but it's sitting in accounts receivable for 30, 45 days. Let's say you don't have a good collections process, it could be even longer. So you're
Mhm.
chasing money from customers that hasn't come in the door. You can't spend that money if you haven't gotten it, right? So the disparity between cash in the bank and your P&L is really truly like something that people have to get their minds around.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons, back to the prior conversation, about why you don't give a P and L and a balance sheet to everyone on your team, because it can be too much. Now, one of the things that you've talked about is tying your money to mission.
Mhm.
How do you guide someone through that when they haven't clearly defined their mission? Like, they just jumped into this trade because they needed a job, and they woke up one day and said, I got 40 employees, and oh, how do you help them get through that if they're in the weeds of the operation?
Yeah, so during onboarding, honestly, it's a pretty intensive process with us. We are spending quite a bit of time, and I give them homework. I say, go home and talk to your spouse about what your personal goals are first, and then let's talk about the business goals and let's tie it all together. Like, and asking why several times, right? Right. I'll have people that say, "Oh, I want to grow, double next year." Okay, why? Like, what's the
Yeah.
incentive behind the number? What do we want to do with it? Are we reinvesting it? Like, what's the passion behind it? What's the impact you want to create? Whether that's for people in the community because you want to hire 40 guys or you want to go buy a beach house at home, that's fine. But like being able to define those, and we actually keep those in our dashboards. So we're monitoring progress against those goals included in our monthly reviews. So it's okay, since last month, have you done the action items to get to the point where we can buy the beach house, 18 months from now? So it's being able to tie the numbers to the goals and keep track of it. That's really important.
Mm, that is so great. I mean, you have so much knowledge about this. You're so down to earth too. Like, I'll be honest, the unconventional is what got me. If you would have just done CFO, I'd have been like, I've sat through those boring financial ones. There is nothing boring about this, and I love how you strip away all the complexity, all that stuff that we think we need to have in there. You're like, no, it's this simple, and I love it. And I know there's people listening right now that I'm sure they learned something, and they're like, okay, I want to learn more. How do people get a hold of you? I know you've got a cash flow thing that they can go through. Like, tell us a little bit about that offer, and then how do people connect with you?
Sure. Maybe I'll do a couple minutes just on cash flow and like what cash flow means and like why it's
Sure.
important. So we talked about the difference between cash and what's on your P&L, but truly we can look at cash in the bank as of today. It doesn't show us where we're going, right? So the way to reconcile between that balance sheet and the income statement is to do a forecast. What a forecast is, it's trying to predict your cash balance over a set period of time. We typically do 12 months. And if things are really tight, we do like an actual 13 week, and then we'll go beyond that. If we have to manage payroll and making sure we can pay that. But it truly is just understanding when cash is going to come in the door. Okay, so I know my payment terms. I'm expecting cash from customers to come in at this rate. So I know when I can allow it out. And the reason I say it that way is there's room to negotiate, right? If I have accounts payable, right, things I owe people, I've got debt obligations, I've got payroll that's got to get paid. I have to be a little strategic sometimes about the timing of that. If I'm working with a GC on a big job and I'm not going to see my retainage till the end of that, I need to understand when that cash is going to come in the door so I can think about how to finance the next thing, right? There is an element of like robbing Peter to pay Paul that goes on when you're dealing with construction and the trades, which is fine as long as you have a plan. So it's being able to forecast that out. It's not a crystal ball. It's not going to be exact, but at least it can help you make decisions because, right, if I can see that you've got excess cash, we can then maybe think about the hire, right? You can scenario build in there before you make the decision. So it's being able to plug numbers into this document and say, okay, what if I hire a salesperson, in October and it's going to take a month to onboard them. Then I'm going to start to see the revenue that comes in. So you can scenario build and understand what the impact is going to be on your cash balance for that specific month in order to, again, see the impact of your decisions before you make them.
Mm,
So that's
yeah.
forecasting. Go ahead.
Wow. Okay. And you've got something that can help them with this cash flow,
Yeah.
right?
So the tool that I have, which is so comprehensive, I will say, so I don't want people to get overwhelmed when they open it. Not every question is going to be for you, but I wanted to make it a document where you feel empowered by, hey, that actually sparks some thought that maybe I need to improve my collections process, right? We just talked about money being left on the table with customers. All right, well, do I have someone who's responsible for chasing that money? Do I have even an IT solution that helps send reminders before invoices are due? There's certain like actual changes you can make to improve your cash position, whether it's on the revenue or on the expense side, to make that timing sync up a little bit better, right? Sometimes you're dealing with seasonal businesses, so it's being able to manage that stuff. So what the document truly does is takes you through each of the levers of cash flow, asks you to grade yourself and be honest, right? Am I red, yellow, or green on this? And if I'm
Mm,
red, maybe I need to go talk to somebody on my team, implement a change in process, and be able to improve my cash flow in some way. So the document really takes you through kind of beginning to end of like, all right, I've identified it's an issue. Here's a suggested change that you can make with your team. And you can even track it right in the document.
that's fantastic. Now, how do people get this, and how do they get a hold of you?
Yes. I will give you the link to put in the show notes if that's helpful,
Absolutely.
for everyone to go ahead and download the tool. If you want to get in touch with me, honestly, I'm the most active on LinkedIn. So connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram as well, but those are probably the best ways to get in touch. Send me a message on LinkedIn. And let me know that you want to chat more about CFO services or you have a question. The other thing which I love doing, and I know this probably sounds terrible for business, but like if anyone's looking for a finance professional, even if it's not me, and I can recommend, hey, you need a bookkeeper, you need a new tax person, like I'm always happy to make connections. Because the one thing I will say, being able to find someone who specializes in your industry is very important when you're looking for someone in finance.
Yeah, I tell my team this. So I've been through a lot of bookkeepers, and the thing I've learned is that it took me like 7 bookkeepers to get there, is that I'm not good at qualifying a bookkeeper because I don't know their world. And so to have someone like you to be able to vet somebody, what an amazing offer. Lauren, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed talking with you, and I know that our listeners have learned a lot.
Yes, I appreciate you having me.
Ryan Englin here. Thank you so much for listening to Titans of the Trades. If you're a titan in the construction, manufacturing, or skilled trades industry and would like to be a guest on my show, please visit podcast.corematters.com. If you found value in this interview, would you share this episode on social media? Just do a quick screenshot on your phone and share it with a friend or post it on social. And if you know someone that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show and include the hashtag Titans of the Trades. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episodes, click the subscribe button. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and get me one step closer to solving the labor crisis facing the industry. Want to know more about how we're doing that? Go to our website or follow me on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening.